Chapter 39:53. The appearance can be the same. After all, the original owner's wish was for Song Qinghan to regret, so let him regret. All right! Exclamation point. Luo Qingshan held her cheek and looked at him in confusion. Why is everything good for you? Because I can't beat a certain someone, so everything must be good. Sky God looked into her eyes and smiled. Do you have any other requests? Then I'll use my own body. After I die, I won't be able to return to the chaos space, right? You can return, he said. The space itself can duplicate identities. It's probably the upgraded version of the body reconstruction method. All right, Luo Qingshan shrugged and said, where will I appear? Where do you want to appear? Luo Qingshan recalled the data on the bronze panel and said, where is Feng Qi? Actually, there was no such person as Feng Qi in the original owner's world, so the male lead of this world was definitely not in the Song country. The original owner was a witch of the Wu country, but she had never heard of the name Feng Qi. Therefore, Feng Qi should not be in the Wu country. Since the world was divided into three, and one of the countries was called the Feng country, then the male lead Feng Qi was naturally related to the Feng country. The crown prince of the Feng country is naturally in the Feng country. Sky God narrowed his eyes, and there was a smile that could not be concealed on his lips. Then please send me to the place closest to Feng Qi. Luo Qingshan patted her clothes, and there was a faint light in her clear eyes. I know you will say yes. After all, you can't beat a certain someone. She actually did not know who the certain someone Sky God was talking about. But since he had already agreed to the previous conditions, and the last one wasn't anything difficult, he had no reason to reject her. How close do you want it? Sky God's tone was a bit playful, but Luo Qingshan did not care. Naturally, it's at this very moment. As close as I can get. All right. In the next second, Luo Qingshan felt dizzy and a very familiar feeling came over her. 3 seconds later, there was a put-on sound as Luo Qingshan fell into a very large pool. Moreover, the water in the pool was still warm. What the hell? Luo Qingshan instantly straightened her body, feeling the water rushing toward her from all directions. After that, a sharp sword was instantly placed on her neck. However, she was very fast and did not wait for the other party to completely imprison her movements. He then took a step back and used his Qin Gong to pull apart the distance between them. Even though it was only a second of confrontation, she could feel the strong aura of the other party, and that his martial arts were extremely high. However, when she took a step back, she realized that the distance between them had allowed her to see more clearly. She accidentally saw the man in front of her clearly. The next second, Luo Qingshan immediately lowered her head and said, I'm sorry. I might have gone the wrong way. Your Excellency, please continue. I will leave now. With her intelligence, she naturally knew that the person in front of her was Feng Qi, but she didn't expect that man called God to trick her. It was better to leave a way out for others in the future. Was there a need to be so ruthless? Host, the problem is he is a god, not a human. What does it have to do with me, what he is? I'm more worried about what I should do now. Host, do you have a better idea other than running? After all, the host saw the male lead naked the first time they met. Do you think you will have a good impression of the host? Chapter 39:54. Brother, wait a minute. Luo Qingshan's eyes widened slightly as she looked at Feng Qi, whose eyes were filled with killing intent. She tugged at the corner of her lips, awkwardly. I went the wrong way, really, I'm not lying to you. The moment he drew his sword, he had already put on a black coat. His phoenix eyes stared fixedly at her, filled with anger. Luo Qingshan expressed that if she was standing in his position, taking a bath very comfortably, and someone suddenly barged in, she would probably draw her sword as well. Who is it? Feng Qi's thin lips moved. Although it was only 2 words, one could still hear the extreme coldness and anger in his tone. Luo Qingshan. She blinked her eyes and introduced herself seriously. I've fallen in love with you. Just as she was about to change the topic and bicker with the other party directly interrupted her. Get to the point. Feng Qi frowned, clearly a bit impatient. Actually, What Luo Qingshan didn't notice was that while he was impatient, his ears were slightly red. This was the first time he had been seen naked by a little girl, and it was a completely unfamiliar little girl. She looked like someone from the Feng dynasty's palace. Am I not the point? Luo Qingshan pursed her lips and said, "This is the first time we're meeting. Shouldn't you introduce yourself? Then what do you want me to say?" Feng Qi was slightly stunned. At this moment, he inexplicably felt that Luo Qingshan's words made sense. He was a bit powerless to refute. "Why are you here?" Feng Qi looked at her self-righteous appearance and actually felt a bit angry. Not just a bit, but very angry. A person appeared out of nowhere, and this person even acted as if everything had already happened and she couldn't do anything about it. How infuriating! Didn't I already say? Luo Qingshan saw Feng Qi's expression soften a bit and raised her voice even more. "I went the wrong way." "You?" Feng Qi was speechless. He was clearly a cold and arrogant monarch. He could clearly drag her out and tear her to pieces with a single order. However, she swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. "I can't help it," Luo Qingshan said seriously. "You can't blame me for this." At this moment, her heart was filled with joy. Perhaps it was because he suddenly remembered a sentence he had read in some books before. If you meet a particularly rude and unreasonable girl, then she must have a man who loves her very much. You are playing, he is laughing, warm life. You? Feng Qi was so angry that his face turned red. But looking at her clear eyes, his words became more and more powerless. In the end, he forced out 3 words, "Follow me." "Oh." Luo Qingshan answered obediently, and then followed Feng Qi. Feng Qi looked at her in surprise, then said, "Why didn't you talk so much when I asked you to follow? What else can I say?" She blinked her eyes and said, "I've said everything that needs to be said. I'm just waiting for you to let me go." Actually, this was just a provocation. She was asking the god to bring her to his side in the first place. She really didn't have any intention of leaving. She just wanted to see what kind of reaction a certain person, who clearly couldn't control his emotions and gaze, would have. "You want to leave just like that?" Feng Qi's expression darkened. "Miss, do you think that you can come and go as you please in my Phoenix Palace?" Dash. Luo Qingshan looked at Feng Qi's angry expression and couldn't help but laugh. Transmigration female lead. Male god, keep teasing transmigration female lead. Male god, keep teasing. Chapter 39:55. She pursed her lips and deliberately said, "Does the king mean that you can't bear to part with me?" Without knowing why, she felt that Feng Qi was a bit cute. Deep down in his heart, he really wanted to show her his cold and decisive side. But the words he said were completely different for what he thought. It could even be said that he was a completely different person. That's not it. Feng Qi flicked his sleeve and turned around to say, "I just haven't thought of how to punish you yet." "Then the king needs to properly think about it." Luo Qingshan gave a shrug and said, "After the fight just now, you should know that my martial arts aren't bad. If the king hasn't thought of how to punish me, I might run away." "You dare?" Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 10%. To be honest, she wasn't surprised at all by this affection, because just looking at Feng Qi's eyes, she could see the helpless pampering in his eyes. Meeting for the first time, this kind of gaze made her heart feel very warm. "I won't leave, I won't leave." Luo Qingshan obediently raised her hand and said, "After all, I am someone who has seen the king's noble body. I should be responsible for you." Luo Qingshan, this was the first time he had called her by her full name in the time it took to brew a cup of tea. His slightly raised eyebrows and slightly widened eyes made him look like a young man who had walked out of a painting. However, at this moment, he seemed to have fallen into the mortal world. Moreover, he had the emotions of a mortal. "What's wrong with me?" She blinked her eyes and looked at him with a harmless look as she said, "Why does the king only say half a sentence? Can't you say all of it?" After that, he closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, his face had returned to its cold and aloof state. He narrowed his eyes and said, "You don't really think that I won't kill you, right?" Every word was filled with coldness and gloominess. But in fact, this was already the limit of Feng Qi's pretense. When he said this, He was forcing her and himself at the same time. He wanted to force her to admit defeat. After all, he had never seen such a sharp-tongued young lady. Furthermore, he showed no signs of fear when facing him. Of course, the reason why she was fearless was probably because of her skills. She was right. Her skills were indeed very good. Although it had only been a second, Feng-Chi was certain that if she wanted to leave the palace, no one would be able to stop her. However, he didn't want her to leave. He kept asking himself why, but he couldn't get an answer. Therefore, he pretended to speak in a cold and low voice in order to force himself. He wanted to know that he was a cold and decisive person, but anyone who touched his reverse scale would not have a good ending. The young lady in front of him had not touched his reverse scale at all. She was challenging his limits. Even so, he still couldn't do anything to her, saying this was his last resort. As long as she begged for mercy a little, he would satisfy the king's ego. However, he didn't know that this so-called young lady had no intention of begging for mercy. She even opened her eyes and walked towards him step by step. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and lifted her eyes to carefully size up Feng-Chi. After a long while, she finally replied in an incomparably calm voice, "Yes, you won't kill me." Transmigration female lead. Prince Charming can't stop teasing transmigration female lead. Prince Charming can't stop teasing. Chapter 3956. In that instant, Luo Qingshun could feel the change in Feng-Chi's expression. From pretending to be indifferent to shock, to anger, and finally to a helpless compromise. "You're crossing my bottom line. Do you know that?" Feng-Chi stubbornly maintained his frosty expression and looked at her, saying, "You have to know that no matter how skilled you are, even if you can leave the palace in the end, you won't be able to leave safely. The problem is that I don't plan on leaving." Luo Qingshun pursed her lips and chuckled. "Just now, the king said that he wouldn't let me leave. Why did he change his mind now?" As expected, the king's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the sea, impossible to guess. That's not what I meant. Are you pretending not to understand? Or do you really not understand?" Feng-Chi raised his right hand, and his slender fingers gently grasped her chin. He raised her face up to his level and said, "I will kill you." "You won't." Luo Qingshun still shook her head with a look of certainty, saying, "Whether it was just now, or the future king, the thought of killing me has never crossed your mind. You all right? If you think I'm wrong, you can have your personal guards come and kill me right now." Luo Qingshun shrugged and said, "I promise I won't resist." Feng-Chi was so angry that his originally cold face collapsed. He wanted to say something, but he realized that what he wanted to say and what he wanted to say were two completely different things. The two forces seemed to be fighting in his mind. Both sides were evenly matched, causing his words to be stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say a single word. Luo Qingshun looked at his handsome face that was flushed red with anger and finally chuckled, saying, "All right, king, I won't mess around with you anymore. I'm hungry, why don't we go eat first?" She was really hungry. After coming here from the chaos space for such a long time, including the time when she received the memories, she hadn't eaten anything. All right, how could she not be hungry? And even though this was the so-called space clone, this was still her body. She definitely couldn't starve. "What? You have the ability to break into the Feng dynasty's palace, but you don't have the ability to fill your stomach?" Feng-Chi snorted softly. Probably because he saw that she was indeed quite slender, he frowned and asked, "What do you want to eat?" Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 20%. After saying these words, Luo Qingshun wasn't startled. Instead, Feng-Chi was startled by himself. What was he talking about? In the face of this kind of insolent person, whose every word and sentence could anger him half to death, shouldn't he be dragged out and beheaded in public? He actually asked her what she wanted to eat. However, even though Feng-Chi was startled, he did not change his mind at all. Luo Qingshun casually took his hand and said, "King, ask the kitchen to bring up all the delicious food. I'm a very picky eater. Most of the good stuff won't enter my mouth." Feng-Chi was stunned, standing there like a puppet. When Luo Qingshun took his hand, he couldn't move at all. He didn't shake off her hand. Instead, he had a feeling that he wanted to turn her hand around and hold it. Calm down. He had to calm down. There were all kinds of strange things in this world. If it was some kind of witchcraft, it was possible that it could confuse his mind. Only, he was very clear that he especially enjoyed this feeling of being confused. Transmigration female lead. Male god, keep teasing. Transmigration female lead. Male god, keep teasing. Chapter 39:57. It was as if she had fallen into a never-before-seen fantasy land. Step by step, she couldn't extricate herself. I think you'll be full after eating a few steamed buns. Feng-Chi still felt that it wasn't good for her to hold on to him like this. He frowned and grabbed her wrist, saying, I haven't eaten yet either. You have to serve me well, otherwise you won't be able to avoid today's punishment. That will depend on whether the Phoenix Palace's food is good or not. If it's good, I will definitely serve the king well. Luo Qingshun turned around with a smile on her face. Feng-Chi looked at her and was a bit dazed. She was very pretty. Even in a plain white dress, she was still very pretty. She was like a fairy that had walked out of the mountains. She walked slowly and lightly, as light as dust. However, she couldn't open her mouth. After all, if she did, most of the time, she would be angered to death. The Phoenix Dynasty's food is famous throughout the world. Whatever you want to eat, I'll have the Imperial Kitchen make it for you tonight. Feng-Chi waved his hand, saying, Servants. This servant is here. Inform the Imperial Kitchen to set up a palace banquet. In the next second, the servants looked at each other and immediately said, yes. They didn't know who the woman standing next to Feng-Chi was, nor did they know where this woman came from. They only knew that this woman wasn't simple. Since ancient times, the Phoenix Dynasty's emperors had never been attracted to women. This was something that the entire Phoenix Dynasty, whether it was the 70 or 80-year-old uncles or the immature children, all knew. It was precisely because Feng-Chi didn't get close to women that there were very few palace maids in the imperial palace, let alone the harem. There is no need to recruit palace maids for matters that could be solved by eunuchs. This was a rule that Feng-Chi had set since he became king. After they left, Luo Qingshun looked at Feng-Chi and asked, What is a palace banquet? A palace banquet with 108 dishes. Feng-Chi calmly replied, but it gave Luo Qingshun a fright. What? 108 dishes? She held her breath and said with widened eyes, Is it that exaggerated? It's too rushed for them to prepare now. 108 dishes, she probably wouldn't be able to finish them in a week. Every grain was hard work. There was no need to be so extravagant. Will it? Feng-Chi narrowed his eyes slightly. He didn't know why, but when he saw Luo Qingshun's shocked expression at this moment, he felt especially happy. Perhaps it was because she had given him the impression that she had been too calm during the entire time. On the contrary, there was nothing in this world that she was afraid of. In fact, he didn't even fear gods or ghosts. Of course. Luo Qingshun looked at his eyes and smiled. Actually, I suddenly feel that the king is right. I'll be full after eating a few steamed buns. Oh, is that so? Feng-Chi immediately replied. Since you think I have a point, someone, Luo Qingshun still wanted to say something, but she was interrupted by the sharp voice of the eunuch. Your servant is here. There's no need to prepare a palace banquet. Just prepare a few steamed buns. Yes. The eunuch stammered. The dishes are about to be ready. Yes, 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 yes. Luo Qingshun cleverly and decisively answered before Feng-Chi could. Since they're ready, don't waste them. Let me try the delicacies of your Feng dynasty. This. The eunuch glanced at Feng-Chi. Feng-Chi nodded slightly. Do as she says. Yes, transmigration female lead. Adonis, keep flirting. Transmigration female lead. Adonis, keep flirting. Chapter 39:58. Ronghua Palace. Feng-Chi was sitting in front of her, sipping his tea while watching her eat. There was a faint sandalwood scent in the air. He narrowed his eyes and was in a very good mood. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 30%. When the system's notification rang in her mind, she didn't forget to look up at Feng-Chi. Feng-Chi was a bit surprised. It was probably because he was happy thinking of her that she suddenly looked up and looked into his eyes. "Are you full?" Feng Qi's voice still had the cold emperor's voice, but there was a bit of gentleness in his words. This was probably the gentleness that he had for her. "No." "Then keep eating." He had to admit that he enjoyed this feeling very much. What kind of feeling was this? It was like something that belonged to him, but he didn't know why it had suddenly disappeared from his life. Then there was a day when it suddenly came back. This was the feeling of regaining something that he had lost. Luo Qingshun looked up at him with a faint smile and said, "The king clearly knows that I'm not from the Feng dynasty, so why do you keep me here?" "I like it." Luo Qingshun was scared, and the large prawn almost fell to the ground. "Your Feng dynasty's people are all this direct? Is this considered direct?" Feng Qi slightly raised his brows and said, "There's something even more direct. The Feng country is missing a mother queen, so I feel that you're very suitable." Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 40%. In that instant, Luo Qingshun didn't almost drop the prawn, but rather the chopsticks. You! Oh no, the king, what did you say? You must have eaten quite a lot of silver for this meal. Feng Qi looked into his shocked eyes, and there was a smile that was hard to hide on his lips. It's normal to need to repay a debt. You! Luo Qingshun blinked and blinked again. You're the ruler of the Feng dynasty. How could you set this kind of trap for a little girl? Isn't it embarrassing to not go? That's not right. What's wrong? Feng Qi took a sip of tea gracefully and said, "First of all, based on your skills just now, you really don't look like a little girl. Second of all, you will soon be the queen of the Feng dynasty. If you don't feel embarrassed, why should I? The king is the one who is wrong." Luo Qingshun shook her head with a deadpan expression. "Who said that a young girl can't have good martial arts? And the title of Empress of the Feng dynasty is such an important title. I'm afraid I can't bear it." Actually, she had just said it casually. She wanted to see Feng Qi's reaction, so she had purposely teased him. After all, it had only been a few hours, but his attention to her and his favorable impression of her was enough to prove that she had suddenly barged into his life and occupied an important position. "Don't worry, you can definitely bear it." Feng Qi slowly stood up and walked towards her. "I, Queen Feng Qi, only need to do a few things." "What?" "Eat, drink, and be merry." She was slightly taken aback. Looking at his eyes, she couldn't help but smile. Luo Qingshun thought that even if it was love at first sight, it was probably just like this. It was just that the young man in front of her had a determined look in his eyes that made her feel especially at peace. Now that the so-called god had appeared, she was probably very close to the end. She really wanted to see what the two of them were like 30,000 years ago. End of chapter. Chapter 39:59. After a long while, Luo Qingshun looked up at him with a faint smile. "All right, then I'll reluctantly agree with the king." The coronation ceremony was held 7 days later. The entire Feng dynasty, from the nobles to the commoners, was shocked by this. After all, in their eyes, Feng Qi was an emperor who didn't get close to women at all. There weren't even many palace maids in the entire Feng dynasty's palace, let alone a queen. After announcing the date of the coronation ceremony, the Feng dynasty fell into a state of celebration. Feng Qi pardoned the country and opened up the national treasury so that everyone could celebrate with him. After all, he was really happy. At the same time, the other two emperors also planned to visit Feng Qi in the Feng dynasty. The Wu kingdom and the Song kingdom had always wanted to visit, but because of Feng Qi's aloof personality, he wasn't interested in the relationship between the two kingdoms. After all, even if the Wu kingdom and the Song kingdom worked together, they couldn't take down a single city in the Feng kingdom. With such a huge difference, the Feng dynasty didn't even bother to meet them. However, this time, Feng Qi unexpectedly agreed with the envoy suggestion. For a moment, both the Song kingdom and the Wu kingdom were extremely nervous, especially the Song kingdom. These years, the Song kingdom's military strength was declining year by year. Plus, there were conflicts inside and outside the imperial court. If the Feng kingdom attacked one day, the Song kingdom wouldn't be able to stop them. Therefore, Both Song Qinghan and Yining felt that they couldn't miss this opportunity to be on good terms with the Feng dynasty. I heard that the Wu Kingdom will also send a great wizard. Honor, what do you plan to do? Ever since Luo Qingchen died, Yin Ying's complexion improved a lot. Now, when she talked about the Wu Kingdom, she didn't have any fear. The only person in this world who knew their secret was dead. Her son would sit firmly on the throne that belonged to him. She would never have to worry. Mother, do you think that I should go myself? Song Qinghan frowned. There were many internal problems in the imperial court now, and the conflicts between the factions were getting worse. If he went to the Feng Kingdom, there would be a lot of things to deal with when he returned. However, his mother's worries were normal. If the Feng dynasty wanted to attack them, the Song dynasty wouldn't be able to fight back. They had to go on good terms, of course. In order to show our sincerity, Mother and the Queen will go together. Yining said earnestly, right now, the Phoenix dynasty can be said to be the ruler of the world. If the Song dynasty wants to peacefully pass 100 years, listen to Imperial Mother. I understand. Song Qinghan faintly nodded and said, Mother, please inform the Queen for me. Although his voice was very respectful, there was an inexplicable coldness in it. Yining was smart, so she naturally understood it immediately. Recently, I have rarely seen you go to the Queen's bedroom. Did something happen? Imperial Mother is worrying too much. The corner of Song Qinghan's mouth curled into a strange sneer. We rarely went there in the past. Recently, we have been busy with state affairs, so we rarely go to the harem. Han has worked hard. Imperial Mother knows that it wasn't easy for you to reach this point. Yining gently patted his shoulder and said, Nothing in this world can be perfect. Do you know why Imperial Mother made that decision that day? Luo Qingchen had clearly been in the Song dynasty for so many years. Even if she wanted to exterminate them, she didn't have to wait so long to make this decision. End of chapter. Chapter 3960. Moreover, Yining was very clear that Ning Shuixin had a strong enmity towards Luo Qingchen. She had already used all means to torture her, to the point that she was about to die. Even if she didn't do anything, Luo Qingchen wouldn't have much time left. But in the end, she still chose to do something. The reason was very simple. Luo Qingchen couldn't live in this world anymore. Even if she didn't have much time left, she couldn't wait any longer. Because she found that there was something wrong with Song Qinghan. He would often sit alone in the imperial study and ask everyone to leave. He could stay alone for a day. No one knew what he was drawing, and no one knew why he asked everyone to leave. They only knew that he didn't even want to see Ning Shuixin. Yining felt strange, so she took advantage of Song Qinghan's absence to go to the imperial study to take a look. Little did she know that Song Qinghan had been drawing a person all along. She had all kinds of expressions, wore all kinds of clothes, and showed all kinds of smiles. This person was none other than Luo Qingchen. Yining knew that there were some decisions that had to be made. Luo Qingchen had to die. Since ancient times, emperors were fickle. Only the more fickle an emperor was, the more stable his country was. Once his heart sank, many things would be out of his control. He should be a famous emperor for all eternity. He absolutely couldn't be defeated by any woman. After Yining said this, Song Qinghan hesitated for a long time. In fact, he should say that he didn't know. But now that she was sleeping underground, he didn't want to lie about anything related to her. He didn't want to lie to anyone, including himself. I know. After a long time, he responded to Yin Ying's question. Yining was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect Song Qinghan to answer so decisively. It was as if he had already said that he liked Luo Qingchen and didn't want to hide anything. Yining closed her eyes. After a long time, she sighed deeply and said, It's fine. She's already gone. If you want to keep some things in your heart, then keep them there. Your son will always keep them in my heart. Song Qinghan said in a low voice. When he said this, he felt relieved in his heart. The feelings that he couldn't admit all those years ago, he finally admitted it so decisively on the day she died. He actually loved her, but he had a lot of things that he had to do. Honor, you should be very clear that if you had stopped her from drenching her finger, I would have listened to you, and you could have saved her. Yan Ying analyzed Song Qinghan's inner thoughts bit by bit. But you didn't stop it because you knew that the mouth of a dead person is the safest in this world. Silence. A long silence. Song Qing-han clasped his hands behind his back and walked out without saying a word. Yining was right. He was the one who did not want to save her. Now, no matter how many emotions he had in his heart, they were all meaningless. He was the one who made the decision, so there was no point in regretting it. At the same time, in Weiyang Palace, Ning Shuixin was informed that she would go to the Feng country with Song Qing-han to attend the Empress conferring ceremony of the Feng dynasty. She was especially happy. Since the death of Luo Qingshun, she felt that not only did her position in the palace not rise, but she was also getting less and less valued by Song Qing-han. Actually, she knew that the reason Song Qing-han married her was only because she was the daughter of the prime minister. He needed the Ning family. He needed the Ning family to help him sit on the throne, not her. End of this chapter. Chapter 39:61. However, she would always think that at least Song Qing-han treated everyone equally. Didn't he treat Luo Qingshun the same way back then? When he needed to rely on the great general's power, he treated Luo Qingshun very well. However, when the great general gave the talisman to someone else, he directly abandoned her. In the cold palace, she thought about Luo Qingshun day and night as if she was tormenting her. Song Qing-han never sent anyone to find her. Because of this, she always felt that Luo Qingshun was not important in Song Qing-han's heart. However, Ning Shuixin didn't know until she died. Some people's souls still lived in another person's heart even after they died. Moreover, they lived a wonderful life. She also saw the portrait that Yining saw. However, she only saw it after Luo Qingshun's death. Those eyes were covered with white gauze. She felt disgusted after looking at it a few more times. She hadn't spent time with Song Qing-han for a long time. Now, the Song Emperor and Empress were going to the Feng dynasty to participate in the coronation ceremony. Finally, she had a chance to spend time with him instead of being rejected outside the imperial study. 3 days later, Song Qing-han arranged the matters at hand and went to the Feng kingdom with Ning Shuixin and Yining. During this time, Yining also received a letter from Brother Fei from the Wu kingdom. The content of the letter was roughly that the person who came to congratulate the Wu kingdom was Elder Gu. He was the most senior elder in the Wu kingdom. However, logically speaking, the witch should be the one to participate in the coronation ceremony. However, the strange thing was that even though Luo Qingshun was dead, the next witch still hadn't appeared. At first, Yining thought that Luo Qingshun's death had angered the god and delayed the appearance of the next witch. However, as time passed day by day, the witch still hadn't appeared. This made Yining more and more worried. Therefore, before going to the Feng dynasty, she sent a letter to the Wu people, asking them to find the next witch as soon as possible. However, she was also very clear that the next witch wouldn't appear just because she said so. Her appearance required the right time, the right place, and the right people. Perhaps she needed the permission of the great heavenly god. Mother, why do you look so gloomy? Did something happen to the Wu people? Song Qing-han glanced sideways, and a glimmer of light flashed in his deep eyes. Actually, he knew that he shouldn't have asked, but he couldn't help but remember that she was once the saintess of the Wu nation. It was as though knowing more about the Magus Empire would allow him to get closer to her soul. Nothing. Yining shook her head gently and said, "It's just that the next witch hasn't appeared yet. The elders of the Magus Empire are worried." Hearing the word witch, the look in Ning Shuixin's eyes suddenly changed. She pursed her lips and said, "Mother, is it possible that the woman left a curse when she died? So shut up." In the next second, Yining scolded, "Wu people are not people you can talk about like this. How improper." Yin Ying's suddenly raised voice and her cold and angry tone made Ning Shuixin stunned for a moment. She hurriedly said, "Imperial Mother, please forgive me. Shuixin knows her mistake. I shouldn't have talked about the Magus Empire's witch." "Humph." Song Qing-han snorted coldly. There was a dark glint in his eyes as he said, "After arriving at the Feng kingdom, please pay attention to your status. Now, whether it's the Magus Empire or us, in terms of strength, We're only vassal states of the Feng Kingdom. If you say something wrong, you'll destroy the entire Song Kingdom. Song Qinghan paused. There was a sharp glint in his eyes as he said, "You can't afford it." End of chapter. Chapter 3962. Along the way, Song Qinghan and Ning Shuixin looked at each other without saying anything. Ning Shuixin thought that she could use this trip to get closer to Song Qinghan so that the emperor would not be so cold to her. But Song Qinghan basically did not say anything to her along the way. He just looked out of the window. He could look at the barren rocks and similar scenery for a long time. He would rather look at the scenery without any beautiful scenery than take another look at her carefully dressed up. Why was that? Why exactly? King, do you need a blanket? It seems to be getting colder and colder along the way. Ning Shuixin's voice was very soft, as if she was playing with cotton. Generally, men would not be able to resist such a soft voice. But Song Qinghan did not seem to have this feeling. Instead, he frowned and said, "No need." Cold, resolute, and even a trace of impatience. There was not a trace of warmth in her voice. Ning Shuixin was startled. A mist appeared in front of her eyes. She bit her lips, but still swallowed the words on the tip of her tongue. She swallowed all the grievances into her stomach. She kept telling herself that she must stay calm. Even if Song Qinghan had another woman in his heart, so what? That person had already turned into dust and no longer existed. The words Luo Qingshun no longer existed in this world. She did not need to be afraid, nor did she need to panic. She had nothing to fear at all. Along the way, Ning Shuixin talked to Song Qinghan intermittently, but he almost ignored her. Instead, he kept looking outside. His thoughts seemed to be pulled away little by little. He did not know why, but the closer he got to the Feng Kingdom, the more he felt his heart palpitate. He always felt that his heart was full of desolation, but he had nowhere to release it. King, it's late. The snow is too deep ahead. The Empress Dowager is tired from the journey. She wants to rest for the night. Okay, you will lie in. Because of the remote location, there were not many guests in the inn. Uniquely intended to send everyone away and book the entire inn, but he was stopped by Song Qinghan. The wind and snow are too heavy. It's not safe to spend the night outside. Song Qinghan said, "No need. Since we're going to the Feng Kingdom with this identity, we don't need to be extravagant." Yes, King, Master. If it was in the past, Song Qinghan probably wouldn't have made such a decision. But now she would. He didn't know when it started, but he also wanted to become better. If only she knew in the netherworld, if only she could see, maybe he could change for the better. Maybe if she was still alive, he would treat her differently. It was snowing heavily outside the window. Ning Shuixin knocked on the door of the inn. "Is the king asleep? I was worried that the weather would be too cold, so I took." The door opened with a bang, and Uniquely walked out and said, "The king is already asleep. Your Highness, please go back. Are you asleep so early?" "Yes." Ning Shuixin held the heater in her hand, and her face gradually darkened. The weather was very cold, and her eyelashes were covered with frost. But even so, it was not as cold as the coldness in her heart. "Then let the king have a good rest. Don't think too much." "Take care, Your Highness." Ning Shuixin turned around and slightly nodded. She took a deep breath and let her tears flow back in her heart. Maybe she would have to spend the rest of her life like this by his side. But this was also good. At least she was still by his side. End of this chapter. Chapter 3963. Song Qinghan was lying on the bed. The bright moonlight shone through the window onto his face. He suddenly didn't feel sleepy anymore. Suddenly, he seemed to hear an intermittent female voice. It seemed to be calling for help, although it wasn't very clear. He frowned and looked at the door of the room. In the end, he decided to jump down from the window. It was already so late. If she was by his side, she definitely wouldn't want him to disturb others. Squeak, 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 squeak. The sound of cicadas came from the surroundings. In such a quiet night, it gave people a very pleasant feeling. Song Qinghan walked towards the direction of the sound and stopped in front of a woodshed. Save me." A woman's voice came from the woodshed. It was stuttering and couldn't be heard clearly. But what was certain was that the other party's voice was very weak. "Is there anyone inside?" The woodshed was quiet for a moment. Then, an even louder voice came out. "Save me, I beg you." Song Qinghan frowned and kicked open the door of the woodshed. What entered his eyes was a woman wearing white clothes. Her face was very pale. Her long hair covered half of her face, but it didn't cover her eyes. She had a pair of beautiful eyes, and this pair of eyes was a little similar to hers. Sir, save me." Probably because the woman's voice was too loud, or maybe because Song Qinghan kicked too hard. The inn's boss and lady boss were all called over. The boss's face was very ugly, and the lady boss's face was even uglier. "It's you again, you little demon. You always use your charm to bewitch a married man. Why are you so cheap?" The lady boss, Chunhua, said while preparing to go forward and slap her. Song Qinghan frowned and very seriously and decisively protected her behind him. He didn't know why, but when he looked at this pair of eyes, he would always unconsciously have a side view of her. It was as if she stood in front of him, looking for the last bit of protection, the last bit of warmth. But the Song Qinghan at that time pushed her into the fire pit, not leaving her any chance to live. During those years in the cold palace, she was so desperate. Even when she was about to die, he didn't let her go. "I'll buy this person." Song Qinghan's voice was very cold. The boss immediately said, "This is our inn's signature maid. She's not just anyone." In the next second, a secret guard standing not far away rushed up and placed a long sword on the boss's neck. The boss was shocked. He knelt down and said, "Hero, please spare my life. Please spare my life." Song Qinghan coldly snorted and said, "Today I won't kill you because of this lady. However, don't even think about keeping your inn open." "Don't, hero, don't." Chunhua shook the fat on her body as she knelt down and said, "Hero, this is a small business. If you like this kind of girl, Before Chunhua could say anything, Song Qinghan had already taken down the sword of the guard standing beside her and slashed towards her arm. Using all of his strength, blood splattered everywhere. "If you want to die, you can continue." Song Qinghan's voice was very cold, without a trace of warmth. The lady standing behind him nodded slightly and looked up at him with tears in her eyes. This was the first time since she was born that she was protected by a strange man like this. There was an impulse in her heart. No matter what happened in the future, she would follow this man. If he wanted her to give birth, she would give birth. If he wanted her to die, she would die in a chapter. Chapter 3964. "Hero, please spare my life. Hero, please spare my life." The innkeeper kept kowtowing and begging for mercy. The innkeeper's eyes had already turned white, and she was about to faint from the pain. Song Qinghan didn't look at them anymore. He directly took the hand of the woman behind him and walked forward. Her foot seemed to be injured. He walked a little fast, but she couldn't keep up. Song Qinghan frowned. He squatted down and picked her up by her waist. She was slightly stunned. She widened her watery eyes and said, "Sir, I can walk by myself. Is it very painful?" Song Qinghan's voice was very gentle. He looked at her eyes and brows, and memories began to be pulled endlessly. A few seconds later, his empty eyes were suffused with a touch of frost. He slowly put the woman down. "Take her to bandage her wound." Song Qinghan glanced at her eyes and said, "Give her enough money and escort her to the nearby town." "Sir." The woman bit her lip and suddenly knelt down. "My name is Raker. If you don't mind, you could take me with you. I'm willing to serve you for the rest of my life." "No need." Song Qinghan lowered his eyes and said, "I'm not from the Foam Kingdom. It's meaningless for you to follow me. I don't need it." Song Qinghan didn't say anything more and turned to leave. Just as Rue was about to get up and follow him, she was suddenly stopped. "You're called Rue, right?" Tao Hua's voice was very sharp. Her red phoenix eyes looked particularly cold under the moonlight. "Yes. Our concubine invites you, ma." "Concubine?" Rue looked very nervous. She nodded and said, "I'll go with you, dash slap." A crisp slap sounded. Rue, who was kneeling on the ground, was directly knocked down. Rue felt her vision go dark. A few seconds later, she came back to her senses. She bit the blood oozing from the corner of her mouth and said, "Rue doesn't know how I offended madam." "Oh." How can a little fox not know? Tao Hua grabbed her collar and said, "When you bewitched the king just now, you looked very much like the bitch our concubine hates." Unfortunately, even though that person was so lucky, he still died in the end. Moreover, it was a tragic death, let alone you. Your Highness, King. Rue Er's eyes widened in surprise. You are. I am the Empress of the Song Nation. The person who saved you earlier is the Emperor of the Song Nation. Ning Shueishin took a sip of tea, narrowed her eyes, and said, "These are all identities that you can't reach in your next life." Rue has never thought about having any status. She pursed her lips, her eyes misting up as she said, "Only wants to stay by the side of my savior." Rue can also serve husband, serve Nyang Nyang. Ha. In the next second, Ning Shueishin sneered and stepped forward. She casually took a hairpin and forced her to raise her head. "Do you think someone of your status is worthy of serving me? You should know that this consort's maidservants are all Sanchi Bao Yi. You're not worthy." As soon as her voice fell, Ning Shueishin used the hairpin in her hand to scratch Rue's face without hesitation. "Ah!" Rue screamed immediately. Just as she was about to scratch a second time, Song Qinghan's extremely cold voice sounded, "Stop!" He strode forward and stood directly in front of Rue saying, "Ning Shueishin, don't challenge my limit." End of chapter. Chapter 3965. At this moment, Ning Shueishin could even see other emotions in Song Qinghan's eyes other than indifference and decisiveness. That was killing intent. Ning Shueishin felt that if Song Qinghan had a sword in his hand at this moment, he would probably put it on her neck. In the past, even if I wanted to punish someone, the king would never do anything. Ning Shueishin took a deep breath, and her tears fell. But now, the king said that I challenged the king's limit because of a lowly woman. Oomph. The next second, Song Qinghan snorted. "Haven't you done a lot of shameful things all these years? She's just an ordinary woman. Why do you have to? What about the king?" Ning Shueishin bit her lips and cried, "Your Majesty, save her like this. Isn't it because her features are similar to that person's?" At this moment, not only was Song Qinghan stunned, even Ning Shueishin, who had spoken those words, was also stunned. That person had been between them from the beginning to the end. No matter if she was the daughter of a general, a concubine in the cold palace, or a dead person in the cemetery, she would always be between them. So what? Song Qinghan narrowed his cold eyes and said, "I have 3,000 beauties in my harem. Any woman I want has nothing to do with you." After saying that, Song Qinghan stopped looking at Ning Shueishin. He picked up her again and walked toward his room. Ning Shueishin looked at his back and sat down on the ground. Suddenly, she felt that she was very stupid. All this time, she thought that as long as she got rid of Luo Qingchen, as long as Luo Qingchen died completely, she could occupy all the space in Song Qinghan's heart. But today, she realized that it was her own wishful thinking. What a ridiculous idea. Luo Qingchen's appearance might have been in that man's heart for a long time. In the room, Song Qinghan asked Eunuch Li to bandage Rue's wound. She lowered her head subconsciously and didn't dare to look at him. "You don't have to lower your head." Song Qinghan looked at her and said, "Life is just a bag of skin. You don't have to feel ashamed because it's incomplete. You're not ashamed at all." He said this to himself, as if he was talking to her, but also as if he was talking to himself. If that person could see this, their impression of him would definitely change. Recently, he didn't know why, but he always wanted to be kinder and protect someone. He wanted to exude a righteous aura from head to toe. He wondered if he could make it up to her. Or perhaps, this way, he could be closer to her. But now, what was the use of him getting closer to her? She was no longer in this world. She would never come back. "Your Excellency's status is so honorable. Rue really can't accept your words. I've changed my mind. From now on, you'll follow me." Song Qinghan said to Eunuch Li, "Prepare a clean set of clothes for her. It's too late today. Have the imperial physician come over tomorrow to change the medicine." My lord." Eunuch Li cleared his throat and said, "Miss should change the way you address me. You should call me king. There's no need for that when we're outside." Song Qinghan glanced at the moon and said, "You'll rest in this room today. It's almost dawn. I'll go out for a walk." King. King didn't sleep all night, or only needs an ordinary room, or a woodshed. Fine. Song Qinghan looked at Eunuch Li and said, "Go get the clothes. This girl will stay in this room with me today." End of chapter. Chapter 3966. Reincarnated Witch. The Phoenix Dynasty's Empress counterattack, 1 out of 1. The candlelight swayed gently as it leaned against the bright moonlight. The chirping of cicadas could be heard, making it seem exceptionally quiet. Rui was injured, so Song Qinghan left the bed to her and made a mattress on the floor. He wasn't sleepy. He couldn't sleep at all. His mind was filled with the things that had happened in the past, the things that had happened with that person. Is there something on the king's mind? Rui's clear and sweet voice startled him. His memory was stretched out again. Yes, Song Qinghan didn't know what was wrong with her. She actually admitted it. If Rui's guess is right, the king saved me because he thinks I look like someone, right? She touched her face gently, feeling inexplicably sad. Yes, he admitted it. This emperor wants to become someone that she yearns for. Song Qinghan didn't know whether he was talking to Rui or himself, the one who can stand by her side when she is in the most difficult time. Rui sighed and said, "That girl is really enviable. Are you jealous of her?" Song Qinghan said with a self-deprecating smile, "She's already buried deep in the earth. She's gone." When Song Qinghan said this, she felt that her tone was particularly desolate. It turned out that there were many things that one would only know how to cherish after losing them. Rui didn't say anything more. The night wind was very cold, and the moon was very dark. At the same time, in the Phoenix King Palace, Luo Qingshun felt that she had gained some weight these days, and the tailor-made queen's clothes felt a little tight now. "Your Highness, you've gained a lot of weight." Gigi, who had taken her measurements, smiled. Luo Qingshun immediately glared at her. She raised her head and knocked on her head. "What are you talking about? Don't you know that it's rude to call someone fat?" "I know I was wrong." Gigi pouted and said softly, "But you'll still look good even if you're fat." "No, this consort isn't fat." Luo Qingshun shook her head as she refuted firmly. But it was only a firm tone. Her body revealed the weakness of her tone. She had indeed gained a lot of weight. She felt that even her head had grown bigger. She couldn't even wear the phoenix coronet anymore. No, this must be her illusion. She wasn't fat. Fat paper will never admit that he is fat paper. Don't come out if there's nothing important. I find you an eyesore. Host, haven't you noticed that there is no such title as Jean, or this palace in the state of foam? I advised the host not to expose herself. Oh, thank you for your reminder. Goodbye. She didn't know why, but sometimes she felt that her system was cute, but most of the time it was very annoying. Your Highness's waist may need to be adjusted. Otherwise, it will really be too tight. Gigi pursed her lips and blinked. Don't worry, Your Highness. Even if it's a size bigger, Your Highness is still very thin because Your Highness has always been thin. Hee. Luo Qingshun gave a shrug and rolled her eyes at Gigi. If you said this earlier, I might have believed it, but now, Your Highness, I won't change it. I won't change it. I won't change it. Luo Qingshun put her hands on her waist and said, I can attend the coronation ceremony with one breath. I can also fast for a few days. Your Highness, shout Detzi requests an audience. Before Luo Qingshun could finish her sentence, Feng Qi's favorite eunuch arrived. What's wrong? End of chapter. Chapter 3967. Reincarnated Witch. The Phoenix Queen's Road to Counterattack. 2 halves. Empress, the king wants you to eat the new lychees with him, Shouta said. The king knows that the Empress likes sweets, so he prepared some other snacks. He said that the Empress will definitely like them. Lychees? Luo Qingshun's eyes lit up. It was rare to see lychees in this cold weather. She had eaten too many delicacies these past few days, so it was good to eat some sweet fruits. Yes, Empress. The king is waiting for the Empress to taste them together. Then lead the way. When Luo Qingshun got into the sedan, the system's voice rang in her ears again. The host was talking about going on a hunger strike a second ago, but the next second, she's eating. She didn't want to be outdone. Was losing weight something that could be done in a day or two? Some people worked hard on this for their entire lives. Don't ask for too much. What if you fainted from hunger? Phoenix Goddess Pavilion. This was the place that Feng Qi liked to take her to. It was on the second floor. Luo Qinshun lifted her dress and walked upstairs. She could smell the sweet fragrance as she walked. The next second, she couldn't help quickening her pace. Why are you running so fast? Feng Qi reached out and took her hand. No one will steal it from you. That's not necessarily true. Luo Qinshun ran into Feng Qi's arms and said, Gigi thinks I'm fat today. King, tell me, do you think I'm fat too? Feng Qi pretended to look serious and said to Xiaoda beside him, drag Gigi down and beat her 100 times. Don't. Luo Qinshun hurriedly said, King, why are you like this? Gigi serves me very well. The king really has a good eye for people. You. Feng Qi looked at her and said, it's because you're too easygoing that the maids are so rude to you. However, you like her like this. As long as she appeared, the harem would be filled with laughter. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 80%. During this period of time, Feng Qi could increase her favorability towards him by eating a meal, and he could also increase her favorability by going out to play. She didn't seem to have done anything, but she had gone from 40% the day they first met to 80%. Seeing this scene, she couldn't help but silently sigh in her heart about what the original owner had experienced. She had tried so hard to obtain Song Qinghan's love. She had not hesitated to kill and use the body reconstruction technique. But in the end, he didn't even walk into the gray area in Song Qinghan's heart. How desolate is this? But between her and Feng Qi, it was always Feng Qi who took the initiative and walked towards her. Occasionally, when she was too lazy to move, Feng Qi would stay in her palace for the entire day and never leave. It was as if he wanted to spend all his time by her side. Always by her side. That's because the king doesn't like women. Luo Qinshun didn't forget to push all the blame onto Feng Qi. It's because of this that the entire harem is deserted. If I'm still strict with the maids, then the harem will probably only hear my chattering voice every day. Feng Qi replied and stuffed a peeled lychee into her mouth. While eating, she came back to her senses and said with trembling brows, King, what do you mean by on? Because I suddenly feel that if the harem can only hear your chattering voice. He peeled another lychee and stuffed it in her mouth. It's pretty good. End of chapter. Chapter 3968. Reincarnated Witch. The Phoenix Dynasty's Queen's Counterattack. 2/3. What's so good about it? Luo Qinshun frowned slightly. Because her mouth was full of lychees, her words were muffled, but it still made her look very cute. Feng Qi gently stroked her head, his eyes filled with indulgence. Seeing that she was eating in a hurry, he didn't forget to pat her back and say, eat slowly. The king doesn't eat anything himself? I don't like sweets. Luo Qinshun suddenly thought of something. That youth didn't seem to like sweets. But no matter where he was, he seemed to have sweets around him. All kinds of sweets, whether he ate them himself or not. He would always have them prepared. He was like this no matter where he was, and Feng Qi was no exception. But why? He was such a cold and arrogant person. Why did he like her so easily every time? The king, Luo Qinshun, took his arm and leaned against him, asking, why do you like me? She actually wanted to ask this question a long time ago. She wanted to ask him every time she met him in every plane. The system said that her mission was about to end soon. Then did that mean that she was already close to the truth? So it wasn't impossible to ask a question that had been bothering her for a long time before she got close to the truth. Feng Qi looked at her eyes. After a long time, he revealed a confused expression. I don't know. He shook his head. I only know that when I'm close to you, I feel very happy. When I look at you, I don't want to look away. When I leave your side, I feel very anxious. He paused and continued. So at first, I didn't know if I liked you or not. I just wanted to be close to you. Then I slowly realized that maybe this is the so-called like. Luo Qingchun looked at his cold eyes, and her lips curled into a smile that was hard to hide. He frowned in confusion, and his eyebrows moved slightly. "What are you smiling about?" "Nothing. I just think that the king is very good-looking." Luo Qingchun gently raised her right hand and smoothed his eyebrows, saying, "I'll never get tired of looking at you. You're so beautiful that I'll never get tired of looking at you." He touched her nose lovingly, his eyes full of gentleness. 3 days later, in the morning, Song Qinghan and the others entered the Feng Kingdom. Feng Qi did not welcome them with great fanfare. At the very least, he sent an envoy to lead them into the palace. This action was not giving face to the Song Kingdom. After all, they were guests from afar. However, Song Qinghan was not in a position to say anything. Originally, he was the one who volunteered to come and congratulate the Phoenix King for finally having a queen. Although he didn't understand why the other party was acting so high and mighty, he was fortunately guided into the palace, so he wasn't too embarrassed. "King Song, please rest first. There are many forbidden grounds in the palace, and Her Majesty's Mushua Pavilion and the Immortal Phoenix Pavilion to the west are forbidden places." "We understand." Song Qinghan nodded and said, "When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Since I'm in the Feng Kingdom, I have to follow the Feng King's rules." "I understand this point." "Thank you, King Song, for your understanding." The envoy bowed and said, "The palace has arranged for palace maids and eunuchs. The great shaman of the Wu Kingdom is in the palace next door. Other than the 2 places mentioned above and the imperial study, King Song can go anywhere he wants." "Thank you, envoy. Then I won't disturb King Song's rest." Looking at the back of the envoy after he left, Ning Shuixin stomped her feet and said, "What's the situation with the Feng Kingdom? Why does it look down on people so much? We came from afar to attend the coronation ceremony. Aren't we giving them enough face?" End of chapter. Chapter 3969. Reincarnated Witch. The Phoenix Dynasty's Queen's Counterattack. 2/4. "Shut up." Yin Ing angrily rebuked. "Do you have the right to speak here?" "Imperial Mother." Ning Shuixin felt wronged. Forget about Song Qinghan's indifference to her. Even Yining had been indifferent to her during this period of time. What did she do wrong? King Phoenix has always been cold and aloof. He despises us and the Magus Empire to begin with. Song Qinghan frowned and said, "For the peace and prosperity of the Song Kingdom, as a vassal state in their eyes, it is normal for us to be treated this way." Ning Shuixin sniffed. A faint mist flashed across her eyes as she said, "I did it for the king. Please don't be angry, fine." Song Qinghan looked up and said, "The day after tomorrow is the coronation ceremony. During these 2 days, everyone should stay in the palace. Don't go anywhere." Although the envoy had only mentioned the places they couldn't go to, Song Qinghan felt that this was the best way to avoid unnecessary trouble. "This concubine doesn't want to go anywhere." Ning Shuixin frowned and said, "It's so cold here. This concubine doesn't want to go anywhere." Song Qinghan no longer paid attention to Ning Shuixin's words. Instead, he turned to look at Ru'er and said, "Serve me and rest." "Yes, king." Ning Shuixin widened her eyes. Before she finished her words, she had been glared at by Song Qinghan. "Remember, you have no right to call yourself my concubine here, and I am not the king." Although he felt a little sad when he said this, it was the truth. Since they were in someone else's territory, they had to follow their rules. Mushua Pavilion. Luo Qingchun was half leaning on the soft couch, reading a book while eating sweets. When she looked in the mirror yesterday, she didn't feel that her face had gotten fatter. But when she looked in the mirror today, she felt that her face had gotten fatter. However, the pastries in her hands never stopped, and she drank cup after cup of tea. "You're so lucky, Your Highness. There are so many officials and nobles attending the coronation ceremony this time." Gigi had complained that she was fat a few days ago, but now she kept giving her delicious food. It was probably because she had heard from the little palace maid that Luo Qingchun had almost been flogged, so she treated Luo Qingchun very well. Even though Gigi had always treated her well, they were still master and servant after all. But in the past few days, it had become a kind of morbid flattery. "I am the queen of the Feng Kingdom. There is nothing strange about the princes, dukes, and ministers attending the coronation ceremony. Luo Qingshan did not care at all and continued to eat the pastries. Of course, it's not strange for the nobles to be in the palace. Gigi massaged her back gently and said, "The point is that the Grand Wizard of the Witch Nation and the King of the Song Nation are here." "Oh, the Wu Nations." Luo Qingshan's expression froze. The teacup in her hand shook slightly. She glanced at Gigi and asked, "What did you say? Which nations?" Not the next sentence. Luo Qingshan was shocked. "You mean Song Qinghan came to the Witch Nation?" "Song Qinghan is the king of the Song Nation." Gigi was frightened by her gaze. She said nervously, "Not only is the king of Song here, but even the queen and empress dowager of the Song Nation are here. This time, they have shown enough respect to the Feng kingdom." He. Luo Qingshan gave a shrug and softly put down the cup in her hand. There was a cold look in her eyes as her lips curled into a cold smile. "So the gods are still good to me. Those who should be here are all here. Good night." End of chapter.